Well, if it's Wednesday, it is time for another episode of the About Mansfield Consumer Advice Series. I'm your host, Steve Casillo, and right now, you are doing one of three things. You are either watching this live on Facebook, you are watching the video on YouTube or LinkedIn, or you are listening to this podcast on your favorite podcast player. Whatever the event may be, we welcome you. Thanks for being here as we present another 10-minute nugget of information. So now would be a good time if you're at work to take that 10-minute coffee break. We'll let you know when it's done. As always, on Wednesdays, we bring in our trademark attorney. That would be Susana Mahady. Welcome back to About Mansfield.
Thank you very much. Happy to be back.
Today, we're kind of combining a couple of things, trademark basics, and also the difference between a trademark and a service mark. And a lot of people will see the tiny TM, and some people will actually see the tiny SM.
Mm-hmm.
And so you deal in trademarks. Do you also deal in service marks?
Well, I think that's why it's important to talk about the distinction, because in the U.S., a trademark combines both the service mark and a trademark, which is sometimes referred to as a product mark. Okay. So it's really, they're combined into the two. And I can talk a little bit about when the distinction is important, but I think it's necessary to go back a little bit to what is the trademark, and that's where we touch upon the trademark basics.
All right, let's go back to Trademark 101. What is a trademark?
So a trademark is typically associated with a tangible product or a service, and it's a recognizable symbol, a design, a word, a phrase, or even a combination of these things that it's used to identify the source of a particular product or a service. So a service mark obviously is like the name refers or infers, is identifies or protects a service that the business is providing as opposed to a physical product. Some businesses do use the little TM or the SM symbol next to their mark, and that's to designate that they're using that mark in their business. However, that doesn't mean that it's been registered with the Patent and Trademark Office. So the main distinction is really, it lies in the nature of what it is that you or your business is offering to the public. But I think the most important thing to remember is that neither of those symbols, the SM or the TM, hold any legal significance. The only symbol that really has any legal weight is the R with the circle, which designates that mark has been registered.
It has been registered. So and if you have a service mark or a trademark, either way, once it's registered, you get the R with the circle.
Correct. So, like what I was saying is in the U.S., the trademark is typically the word trademark is typically used to refer to both, symbols of service marks or actual products, and it's only used to highlight the distinction when it's really necessary, and it becomes necessary when you do go and apply to register your trademark. So, if you remember when we talked about registration process, there are 45 different categories of classes. So the first, I believe it's the first 34 refers to products, and then 35 to 45 is for services. And so that's when it does become necessary to distinguish whether you are providing a service or just a product. And I can give you some examples of,
yes, please.
Like for instance, if you're selling, mugs, obviously, you're going to be in a category that references those types of products. Whereas if you're providing coaching services, for instance, then that's a service. And so your mark is going to be registered under a different category. And so in that sense, it is important to distinguish whether you are providing a service or a product. But now, if you don't let's just assume you don't register your mark, and you're in business and you don't use the TM or SM symbol, then it really doesn't have any legal consequence, other than maybe you want to let people know that you are using that mark and you are it's like a placeholder, like in case you are planning to register it in the future. But they don't really hold up in court to protect your mark, because if somebody goes and registers it, then you might be infringing on their mark, because you don't know how long ago they've been using it. And if you haven't gone through the process of doing a comprehensive search and applying to register, you don't know if that mark is even available for you.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. And then that even both my recording studio and this About Mansfield podcast, we use the TM, which tells people that, hey, maybe I have the intent of taking both the studio and the podcast names and trademarking those names. In fact, maybe we should talk about that sometime here in the near future. And so, what is the? So again, there's the product trademark, the product mark. There's also the service mark, and I've seen in some cases where someone will service mark or put the SM on like a motto, a slogan, even though it may not be a service that they're providing. It could be, like Taco Jacks, as we talked about in our last episode of tacos and trademarks. I'm using this as an example, but it's not it's not specifically what they do. Taco Jacks could be a trademark, but Taco Tuesdays could be a service mark. It's not what they do, but I saw something similar to that. Is that what a service mark would be used for?
It's you can have a product, or you can have a mark that applies to both a product and a service. So it could be that they're using that slogan for a service and also for a product, and that's why it's really important to have that distinction of what it is that you are providing to the consumer when you do go forward with an application to register that mark. Because if let's just assume that you apply to register under one category because you have a product, and you are assuming that you are protected for in any class or any category using that mark, and that's not the case. And that's when it becomes important to have somebody go through this with you to make sure that you are protecting your mark in all of the categories that apply to your business. And an example of this is like McDonald's. McDonald's is registered as a product, as a good. Obviously, they have things that are they're selling with that mark,
right,
that are physical products, and they also provide a service. It's a restaurant service, and so they are registered under multiple categories to make sure that they are protected in across the spectrum. So that's why it's important to know that you might see that SM or TM mark on different things, and it could be that they're using that for both products and services.
You got me hungry. Now I can't decide whether I want tacos or Big Macs.
For breakfast?
No. It's almost noon here.
Oh, true.
So in the minute or so that we have left on our listeners' coffee break, do you want to recap, or should we get right into your contact information?
Let's get right into it.
If someone had more questions, if someone was curious about how do I do a service mark, how do I do a trademark, how do I do a product mark, how do I get my little R versus the TM and the SM, how can they reach out to trademark attorney Susana Mahady?
Well, they can reach me by finding me on my website. My contact information is there. My website is www.mahadylaw.com, and that is spelled MAHADYLAW.com, or you can always shoot me an email directly to smahady@mahadylaw.com.
That's Susana Mahady. We do this not every Wednesday, occasionally Wednesday. And by the way, next week is 4th of July week, so we'll be taking that week off. So we'll see you in a couple weeks.
See you in a couple weeks.